Gut-Punched, Alzheimer's, and Caregivers. Navigating the insidious illness of Alzheimer's is something nobody asks for. The disease sneaks up on you and your loved one, and it feels like you've been sucker punched in the gut. Then you ask, where do we turn for help? Who do we call? What do we do? These questions and more are what we hope to answer and give you some direction and hope. Now let's join our host, Jeff Edwards.
Greetings and welcome. This is Gut-Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, episode 67, or Caregiving is Caregiving, no matter what the reason is that it's needed. It's one of the most important things you'll do. And our guest today will share his story. Thanks for joining us today. You know, this wouldn't be Gut-Punched if we didn't go over our tenets or rules. And the tenets we follow at Gut-Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers are simple. 1, you have to take care of yourself because if something happens to you, who is going to take care of your loved one? 2, you can't do it alone. You need help. Find good caregiver groups or network with friends or relatives. Number 3, make a list of people, friends, relatives, co-workers who have offered to help you in time of need. And then make a list of things you need done but can't do yourself because caregiving duties are overwhelming. Use the lists. Start at the top, keep going till you get what you need done, and you're going to find it very helpful. Number 4, create a help signal. Identify a cue or phrase to confirm your loved one is comfortable with receiving help. And we're going to try out number 5, caregiving. Love it or hate it. It will be your life until it's not. Give it your all. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review. Help us grow and share this podcast with others who have someone who has a family member or friends who are dealing with a loved one who has Alzheimer's or any type of dementia that you would let them know about this podcast. They may need the information and resources. There is help and hope for everyone out there. You just must know where and how to find it, and that's why we're here. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. I came across this blog, and later on I'll share who wrote it. And the title we'll call it is These Truths May Not Be Easy, but They're Real. There are parts of being a caregiver that are hard to put into words, even when you're doing everything right, showing up, being strong, staying organized. It can still feel like you're quietly unraveling inside. And that's why I wanted to take a few moments to speak openly about some of the harder truths of caregiving. These are things we all experience but don't often say aloud. One of the most difficult feelings is isolation. You can be in a room full of people and still feel completely alone in what you're carrying. It's not that others don't care. It's that they don't fully understand. The loneliness of this role isn't always about being physically alone, but about being emotionally and mentally separated from the people around you. That's why connection matters. Even a single conversation with someone who gets it can lift a weight you didn't know you were holding on to. Then there's uncertainty. It can be relentless. Every day feels like a new set of unknowns, doctor's updates, waiting on labs, adjusting to new medications or side effects. You plan as much as you can, but so much of this journey is beyond your control. That kind of unpredictability wears on you, and yet we keep putting one foot in front of the other, even without a clear map. And sometimes that's the bravest thing we do. Exhaustion is something that comes with the territory, but it's not just about physical tiredness. It's the emotional strain that comes from constantly anticipating needs, monitoring every detail, and trying to stay calm while your insides feel like a storm. You learn to operate on low reserves, and sometimes you forget what true rest even feels like, but your body and spirit still needs to care too. And honoring that isn't selfish, it's necessary. And then there are the days when resentment shows up. It's not easy to admit it, but it happens. You love the person you're caring for deeply, but that doesn't mean you don't get tired of the demands, the loss of your own freedom, or the ways your life has changed. It doesn't make you a bad caregiver. It makes you human. When we acknowledge the resentment instead of burying it, we create room to heal. Sometimes though, the hardest feeling of all is helplessness. You've done everything you can, and it still doesn't feel like enough. That ache, that inability to fix or change things, can and still doesn't feel like enough. That ache, that inability to fix things or change things, can feel crushing. But what I've come to believe is this: your presence matters more than you know. Being there, day in and day out, is doing something. It's the kind of love that can't be measured on a chart, but it's real and it's powerful. And through it all, through the fatigue, the fear, and the overwhelm, there is still space for gratitude. Gratitude for another day, for a moment of peace, for a smile, or a shared laugh. And most of all, gratitude for the gift of life, however fragile or uncertain it may feel. The very fact that we get to care for someone we love in this sacred way is in itself a kind of a blessing. If no one has said it to you lately, let me say it now. You are doing an incredible job. This path isn't easy, but you don't have to walk it alone. We're in this together. A powerful blog. Emotional. I didn't write it. I kind of live it. And in future episodes, I'll tell you more. I have some stories, and I want to thank George for this.
We'll be right back to Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
In the fight against Alzheimer's, now matters more than ever. Because now we have treatments that could change everything. But now is no time to stop. Now we've got momentum, so now we use it. Now we seize the moment. Now we turn the tide. Now we make a difference and make some noise. Now is the time to get up, get out, and join the movement. At the Alzheimer's Association Walk to End Alzheimer's, held in over 600 communities nationwide. And we need you with us. Because now is the time for hope. Join the fight at alz.org/walk.
This is Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
I heard about George and Terry and their story from an old friend of mine, BJ Odom. BJ himself has had a heart transplant and a kidney transplant. Last year in Gut Punched episode 10, we spoke with BJ about his past. We were also interviewed on BJ's podcast, The Gift of Life. We talked about caregiving on both podcasts. Caregiving, it's a universal topic. We talk about it all the time here at Gut Punch, Alzheimer's, and Caregivers. Ever wonder why? I'll wait. It's because it's so damn important. Mostly, it's done out of love. To help your loved one travel the bumpy road between life and death, health and sickness. Now, here are a couple of questions for you. What's the difference between an organ transplant and an Alzheimer's dementia patient, besides the obvious? And what does a heart transplant and Alzheimer's dementia patient have in common? Very important. Both need caregivers. And today we're going to talk with George Cecere. Hear his and Terry's story and find out about his virtual support patients. THC Caregivers Heart Support Community. Ambassador, Network for Hope and Life Connection of Ohio. Now, the Caregivers Heart was formed to provide this resource for anyone who cares for or supports heart transplant patients, whether prior to their surgery or after. As a caregiver for a heart transplant patient, we all often need a safe place to allow thoughts, emotions, and feelings to be heard. Now, George's wife, Terry, had a heart transplant November 5th, 2022, and George is Terry's caregiver. And since that time, George has created a virtual support. We're going to be talking with George and find out what's going on. I'm on the phone with George Cecere. How you doing this morning, George?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm okay. Can you give our listeners a little background on yourself and your wife, Terry?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I am the caregiver and spouse of Terry, who went through non-Hodgkin's lymphoma back when she was 16 years old, shortly after she and I met. And we were together during that time and worked together to help her recover from that life-threatening disease. And then we married. It was kind of inevitable after that, and we had gone through that together. So we've been married for 47 years as of this August. I've had just a wonderful life and a wonderful relationship. But because of the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and the chemotherapy that she had back then, many years later, when in 2004, she was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, congestive heart failure. And that began our second journey. And that was going through about 18 years of cardiomyopathy with the restrictions that entailed, but really weathered that pretty well. We had our 2 kids. We lived our lives. We had our careers, went along pretty much normally. In 2019, we retired and we moved back to Ohio from Kentucky. We continued to go to the doctor that we had been going to for about 17 years, her heart failure specialist. And we literally moved back this way because we wanted to be close to him.
Right.
And late in the summer of 2022, we got the call from Dr. O'Brien, and he basically said, look, I think the numbers have kind of been trending downward, the numbers that we watch so closely with your cardiomyopathy, and it's time we start talking about end-stage heart failure and the advanced heart failure team. So even though we knew intellectually that was going to be the outcome eventually, it was still kind of shocking because we weren't ready for that at that point. But we, jumped in and said, okay, what do we need to do? It's always kind of been our attitude. Let's accept what's going on and work together. We're very good problem solvers, and we have had a great relationship where we work closely together. And so we dove in and we started to learn about the options. And that would have been an LVAD, which is a left ventricular device that keeps your heart pumping, or of course, heart transplant. And the preference was heart transplant. So we met with the team in late October of 2022. They then certified that they were going to become a heart transplant center. I should mention that where Terry had her transplant, the Christ Hospital in Cincinnati, had been a kidney transplant hospital for about 50 years, but they had not had a heart transplant program prior to this. And literally 3 or 4 days after we had our first meeting with them, they got the approval to become a transplant center. And as fate would have it, Terry turned out to be the first heart transplant recipient at that hospital, which was an adventure in and of itself.
It must have been, yeah.
Yeah. She ended up in the hospital. Her heart literally failed, and she went on an Impella heart pump. That was in late October, I believe October 26th. She got listed for a heart transplant on November 1st, and we were blessed with the gift of a heart on the 4th. And then she had her transplant overnight, the 5th into the 6th. So officially her heart transplant was on November 6th, 2022.
Wow.
So that was kind of the overview of the journey. And obviously there's a lot of details in between there, but that kind of goes from early days through that, both of those life-threatening diseases, and then eventually to the heart transplant.
Right. So when all this happened, did you have any idea what was to follow for you? And have you ever been a caregiver before?
I don't really think I was necessarily prepared for what was to come. Again, I mentioned Terry and I are always really good problem solvers, so we tend to take things on and figure out what the best course of action is going to be. But I don't think I really had any idea the scope of what it was going to be a caregiver for somebody who had a solid organ transplant, either immediately after the transplant, which was very intense, or even long term. We're now 32 months post-transplant, but, the caregiving goes on and it changes over time. It evolves like anything else. But I don't really think I knew. Now, I was kind of, I guess, caregiver, as I look back on it, through our time growing up with our kids. It seems like when they needed the care, it was me that would be there for them when they were sick or whatever, and stay up with them all night. I also was kind of the caregiver for both my parents before each one of them passed away separately, kind of taking care of them and taking care of the business side of things for them over time. But that was not quite the same. It was caregiving for sure, but it was not quite the same as what I've since experienced being a caregiver for an organ transplant recipient.
Sure. What did you have to learn and how did you learn it? Were there any places that offer training and education or resources that were available to you?
Well, that's kind of one of the things that's a little ironic. There aren't a lot of resources. There are some. I don't want to say that there are none. I did all the research that I could. I looked things up on Google and I tried to find out what it was like and what kind of things that the caregivers might face. But there weren't a lot of resources. At first, I kind of thought, like a lot of guys do, that I don't need any help. I can handle this. I'm good. I got this covered. Yep. Well, I very quickly realized that I was wrong. And I am one to say, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I was definitely wrong about that, because the emotions and the feelings that you have as the caregiver in this circumstance with someone who is emotions facing that life-threatening situation, they're new to you. I mean, they're not the same kind of emotions and feelings that you felt in the past. And even though I thought I could handle it, I quickly realized that I really needed some support. So I did reach out to the social worker at the hospital, and she recommended a group that meets virtually that is caregiver only. There aren't very many of those, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. But she did recommend a group out of Philadelphia called Howie's House, Gift of Life. And I joined that online virtual support group just to kind of see what that would be like, to see if I really felt like I needed that assistance. So I probably did that, I don't know, maybe 6 months. That first several months after the transplant is very, very intense. And, you know, Terry had been sick for quite a while and she was very weak afterwards. So I literally had to do everything for her. And I will say that the nurses in the CVICU at Christ Hospital, and again, Terry being the first transplant, a lot of the care for these people, for transplant patients, was new to them. Mm-hmm. But they were very open and giving in terms of teaching me techniques and things to do on how to take care of her. And I was really in awe of them working those 12-hour shifts and doing so much as I watched them take care of her. One thing I didn't prepare for was the fact that I would have to do all of that on my own. And it wasn't a 12-hour shift, it was a 24-hour shift.
Yeah.
And so that became, you know, a struggle at first. But I think adrenaline and just the desire and the focus to make sure she was okay kept me going through that.
What was the hardest thing for you to do while being a caregiver? But you get kind of thrown into it and say, okay, this is what I have to do. What did you find was the hardest thing to do while being the caregiver?
The exhaustion became something that was difficult, but I think the adrenaline helped me work through that. That was more the physical thing. But I think probably the most difficult aspect has been, or the emotional feelings that you have. There are some things that caregivers seem to universally go through. And I think this is true from what I've learned since then with the work that I'm doing with the caregivers. These are true regardless of whether it's an organ transplant or even any other life-threatening or life-altering disease or illness that people are caregivers for. There's isolation. People tend to feel like I'm the only one here, even in a room full of people that nobody else really understands. There are things like the concern over what's to come, the unknown, what's going to happen next. Because in this world and in those other worlds, I would imagine, even though right now things are good, there's always that kind of thing lurking in the background as to what might happen next. And that becomes something that's difficult. There are emotions like resentment. And resentment is a tough one. A lot of people don't want to talk about that, but it's real. It's a real thing.
Yes, it is.
Because you feel resentment, not so much against your loved one. That's not my point. But I think the resentment is that the life that was lost. I mean, there's a mourning that you have to go through because life after transplant is not the same. Mm-hmm. It's life, and that's the number one thing you have to stay focused on, but it's not the same as it was before. So dealing and coping with those kind of emotions and PTSD, I mean, we call it caregiver PTSD, but it's the typical thing. I think those things, the emotional part of it was probably the biggest thing that I had to learn and figure out how to deal with.
It's not easy, and it doesn't make a difference what the problem is that's causing it, but it's universal for every caregiver, and no matter what it is. And emotional is one of the biggest things, and that tires you out by itself. Now you're open to more stress, more illnesses, etc. And no matter who you're caring for, it's not an easy job. Not at all. Not at all. And I'm telling you firsthand, too. Even at this different stages of illness. In our case, my wife has Alzheimer's. Now, eventually, that'll take her to another place, mentally and emotionally and communication-wise. And I understand that. I have to lock it up and put it way back in the back part of my brain so I don't have to open it until I really need to open it.
Yes. Yeah. You do definitely need to learn to compartmentalize those things. And I've never been really good at that. So that has been a struggle because you have to deal with what's in front of you.
Yep. No doubt.
And not get too focused or too obsessed with what could happen and try to deal with what's right in front of you.
Right. Now, you had mentioned a support group. And one of the things that I have found having to learn and talk to other people that go through it. And it's an integral part in working through the whole process that you're facing, no matter how long it goes. assistance from a friend or a relative. Sometimes they're there. Oh, I'll help you anytime. And they don't do a thing for you. And you just have to kind of move on. But a caregiver group is just phenomenal because you learn so much and you can communicate and get rid of some of those emotions and some of those resentments, which is like, hey, I worked my whole life. What have I got to do this for?
Right.
And so it's tough. You ended up starting a virtual support group.
Right. So based on that experience that I had with the group that I joined, Howie's House, out of A Gift of Life in Philadelphia, I started joining those meetings. They met twice a month online, and I started joining, and I was pretty reticent at first. I thought, I don't know if I'm going to like this. They're talking about a lot of things I don't know if I want to hear. But again, I quickly realized that I needed that. Mm-hmm. And as I listened more and more, and as I got involved and talked and shared with the group more and more, I realized how vital that actually was to my mental health and to my emotional well-being and to my ability to keep going. Because, there gets to the point where you say, man, this is hard. I don't know if I can keep going because you're exhausted, mm-hmm. Not physically so much, but mentally and emotionally. I realized that was a really important resource. And so I started looking into what other resources might be available for caregivers. And I kind of landed early on the concept that it was important to have a group that was caregiver only. And the reason is there are lots of groups out there that include both the caregivers and the patient. And that's wonderful and it's needed and that's important. But I also soon realized that if you have the recipient there, the caregivers are not going to talk about the things that they need to talk about, which is their feelings. Right. It's not that we're ignoring the recipient because they're an important part of the equation. But the goal of the group, in my mind, was to care for the caregiver. And that's kind of what I was looking for. So I got with our hospital where we had done the transplant and I said, look, I'd like to do this. I'd like to start a group like this. I'd like to help you guys put together a group. And they said, well, yeah, that's a great idea. And I talked to the director of the transplant program and Terry's surgeon, and everybody was like, wow, that's wonderful. We need to do that. And I said, okay, well, let's do it. They needed help with the resource to get that done. And I just said, you know what? I'll do it. I don't mind doing it at all. So it was born out of that idea. It started with a very narrow focus. I was just going to do heart recipients from Christ Hospital. And remember, I said Terry was the first, but They've done 50-some by now. So the group was growing a little bit. So I thought, okay, let's do this. So I figured I would get this started. They helped me kind of put it all together. And then initially, the only way I could reach the caregivers was for them to reach out because of HIPAA. I couldn't know who they were, and they had to reach out through the patients and through the caregiver information that they had. And they did that for me. The group launched a year ago in July. Got some really nice response immediately, got about a dozen people who joined. And at that time, there were only about 25 or 30 transplant patients. And we started out and I started hosting this group. We did it twice a month. It went really well, but we got to a point where it just wasn't growing because the potential pool of caregivers was too small. Mm-hmm. And so I decided this past March, just a few months ago, to expand the group, open it up to transplant recipients of all types from anywhere. When I went out and bought a domain and built a website and kind of got things going, right, and started really through social media and some other contacts that I had to reach out and start making people aware of the group. When I did that, I had about a dozen members. And I just looked this morning because I'm getting ready to do the next meeting we're doing this Thursday. I just looked this morning and I have 92 members right now. So it's grown significantly since March to 92 members. And that's really through social media outreach and some other contacts that I made. And what I've discovered is that kind of found a niche because first of all, there's a big need for it. And I think the fact that it's caregiver only, in other words, we don't have the recipients. It's peer-led as opposed to social worker-led. The person leading it or facilitating is going through the same journey as the people that are a part of it. And of course, it's accessible because it's online and it can come. So we have members now in the group from Canada, from Australia, from Tanzania, and from all over the country, which is just phenomenal. And we just we'd started out with every second and fourth Wednesday each month. That was kind of when we did the group. So we've now expanded it. We're going to have a Tuesday morning session and a Thursday evening session, because I don't mind doing it. I'll do it any time of the day, any day of the week. We're just starting that here in the end of July and August, where we'll have basically an opportunity every month at different times for different people to join the group. So we'll see how that goes. But the response has just been phenomenal, and I get just as much out of the group every time we have a session as I hope the members do.
I understand that completely. It's good for you. It's good for them. I'm happy to hear that the success is there, because it's going to grow. It's funny with topics that are not necessarily sexy.
Right.
You go, I don't really want to talk about it, or I don't want to hear about it. But eventually they're going to have to, and you're there.
Yeah. One of the things that was really important to both Terry and I, and particularly to Terry, and I have to make sure that I acknowledge the support that she has given me to do this. And I remind her every day that my number one priority and focus is you. But we wanted to give back right away. That was an instinct that we had from the very beginning.
Where can people find you? On Facebook or other platforms?
Probably the best place to try to visit with TCH Caregivers Heart and learn about the group and even register for the group or the Facebook group is on our website. And that's www.tchcaregiversheart, all one word, .com. So tchcaregiversheart.com. And the TCH, by the way, stands for The Caregiver's Heart. That was the idea of TCH. It also is Terry Cecere's heart. That's my wife. Mm-hmm. And then the hospital was The Christ Hospital. So the TCH sort of came into that whole thing. But it's not The Caregivers, it's TCH Caregiver's Heart. So sometimes people get confused with that. And then I'm on Facebook, and you can find me there. The Facebook group that we have for the caregiver group is a private group. In other words, you need to be a caregiver. Once again, trying to keep that space safe for the people so they can feel free to say whatever they feel like they need to say. But I'm on Facebook too, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram, and you can find me on those too and see information. But the website's probably the number one place. There's a really nice little video that the hospital produced shortly after Terry's transplant that kind of tells her story. I have a little introductory video on there. I have a blog section at the end where I kind of just share thoughts. I did a lot of journaling and kept a lot of information during the transplant process, very, very detailed. And, I use some of that as just my thought about that. And primarily that's to show people that they're not alone in this. I mean, one of the big themes of this in my mind is that as a caregiver, so many people I've had join one of our meetings online and say, I've had these feelings. I feel bad about saying them, and they'll bring something up and they'll talk about resentment or isolation or exhaustion or whatever it is. And they'll feel like, gosh, I'm the only one that's feeling this. And then 12 people on the Zoom call will sit there and nod their head, said, oh yeah, we get it. Mm-hmm. And that moment of connection and that moment of community that people feel, I think, is what they seem to appreciate the most. I thought maybe I was the only one that felt this way, but it's so comforting to feel that other people understand and feel this way too. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm doing this, because I want to help those people understand that they're not alone. And this journey is difficult. As difficult as it is, and sometimes we talk about all the struggles and we laugh and we cry and do everything else. The other emotion that comes through is gratitude. Almost to a person, everybody that I interact with in this world has that sense of gratitude. I know I do. I'm grateful every day that we wake up, that we have another day.
It's very well said, and it's gratifying, using your word, to hear somebody else doing the same thing. You're giving back and you're trying to help other people.
I'm grateful and thankful that it's good for other people, but it's also selfishly, it's good for me too, to be able to do this.
Understand. Well, George, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your experiences and your current goals and your future goals in caregiving. People should be thankful for that, and I do appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for the conversation. I sure enjoyed it, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to share the story and to talk a little bit more about caregiving, which is such an important thing and something that people need to know about. And so I'm glad to have this opportunity to share.
For more information, reach out to the Dubin Center, dubincenter.com. You can also check out the Alzheimer's Support Network at alzsupport.org/about-us. To find your local chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, you can visit or call their toll-free hotline number at 1-800-272 1-800-272-3900. That's 1-800-272-3900. They have a new resource, Dementia Care Navigation Service, powered by Ripple and the Alzheimer's Association. Caregivers and people living with Alzheimer's or another dementia can access personalized dementia care for free, including a dedicated care navigator and tailored resources. You can call 855-271-2662 to get connected. That's 855-271-2662. Take the first step and contact them. Check it out. We mention the guide frequently. It's another great resource and provides help and respite care. It's probably easier to just Google it, Edge it, or DuckDuckGo it. Check out Gut Punch Alzheimer's and Caregivers Group on Facebook. It's under Jeff Edwards or Gut Punch Alzheimer's and Caregivers Group. Easy name to remember. I'd like to thank all those who help and contribute each week to build this podcast. I couldn't do it without you. Our website is gutpunch.com and the email address is gutpunchedac@outlook.com or jeff@gutpunch.com. Thanks for joining us, and please come back again. God bless.
This has been Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, with your host, Jeff Edwards. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to us on all the platforms like Spotify, Apple, Pandora, and more. If you have a question or want to get in touch, our email is gutpunchedac@outlook.com.